Hi, everybody. So lovely to be with you today. Always grateful to be with this community. Uh, Yesterday morning, kind of a normal day, but I was dropped off one of our kids at school, as I do on a normal day, and was driving home, and I almost got in an accident. Uh, don't worry, everything's fine. But as the other person drove by me, and both of our windows were up, disaster narrowly averted. I felt like I was in the right. Uh, I could see that she was yelling like crazy at me from inside her car, with a very, very angry face. Uh, 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 and it really, I got home like 1 minute later and I was fine, but I really felt it. And it was so unexpected. It was a kind of a normal morning. And then all of a sudden there was this unexpected thing, this rush of emotion, challenging moment. And I could still feel it, the kind of the remnants of it in my body for a little while after I got home. And as the the amazing synchronicity with the Jewish calendar and really our cycle of Torah readings brings us to what I want to offer today, which is really teaching intended and a practice intended to support us, especially in those times of like something unexpected. And of course, the truth is, every in every moment, no matter how normal it seems, or in how like kiragil, normal, normal, a moment that may be, it's actually there unknown what's going to happen in the very next breath, in the very next moment. Maybe there are a lot of things that are known and predictable, but there's still a significant amount of our experience that is unpredictable. And so, how do we use our practice to help us cultivate a quality of being that can support us in those unexpected times, uh, especially when those are challenging? Sometimes the unexpected is quite pleasant, and that's great. But sometimes the unexpected, maybe even oftentimes, the unexpected can be really challenging to deal with and kind of discombobulating and dysregulating. So this week in Parshat Vayetze, we read about an episode that becomes what our sages in the Talmud came to see as the moment in which our evening prayer of Mariv was established. And this is the moment in which Yaakov, Jacob, he's fleeing from an episode with his family. He goes into the wilderness, and it says vayivga b'makom vayalen sham. He kind of strikes, or he arrives at the place, but that language of vayivga can mean to strike something. He arrives at this place in this kind of sudden way, and then he goes to sleep there. And I'll come back to that story in a moment, but the sages in the Talmud identify this as the moment in which, as I said, the Mariv, the evening prayer, is established, and it is a kind of sets a template for a spiritual type, a kind of spiritual experience that's captured there. That again, we're going to come back to in our practice. But this is the third one because before him, his grandfather Abraham, as the rabbis in the Talmud ascribed him as instituting Shacharit, the morning prayer service, and then Yitzchak, Isaac, with the afternoon service. And each one is a different spiritual quality, and actually a kind of a matrix of different associated qualities, and they're all rich stories to explore. But here we are this week with this episode with Yaakov. Vayivga b'makom, and he strikes the place. He arrives in this place. Years ago, in a house that I don't live in anymore, in my office, part of the ceiling was dropped down, And like maybe twice a year, I would just walk into it, like, you know, going to get something and I would just walk into this thing. And it was like, oh, you know, something unexpected. And it would strike me and get me to pay attention to what was happening a different way. So too, you know, what I described yesterday with this near car accident, something unexpected that I struck. Thankfully, not literally in that case, but I can something happened, and there was an impact. So, what do we do, and what's the model for a kind of practice that can support us in these times? And I really want to take my cue from the Parsha, from the Torah portion itself, because it offers such beautiful practice instructions, and actually ones that I relate to all the time when I'm practicing. But it's an especially auspicious time to focus in on them today, and then we'll practice with them. So, number one, let me just read a couple more lines of this episode. So, Jacob left Beersheba and headed out to Haran. He came upon Vayifga b'makom. He comes to this certain place, stops there for the night, for the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place. And then he has a dream. A stairway was set on the ground. Vayachalom v'hine sulam mutzav arza v'rosho magia hashamayma. The stairway was set on the ground and its top reached to the sky, and angels of God were going up and down on it. And there's more. It's a great story. Check it out if you don't know it. And even if you do know it, check it out. But I want to pick up on a couple of pieces there as practice instructions. So number one, what an amazing thing. He gets to this place and night comes, and I could just imagine if I'm to put myself in Yaakov's shoes, this real feeling of like fear running through the night in the wilderness. I don't know where I am. It's very scary. And there's a lot of movement and a feeling of not being safe, or I'm sure it's very difficult to feel settled in that kind of scenario. So he puts this rock under his head, and the language is weird, and the commentators have a number of different interpretations of what is he doing. But I think at its core, it's a very much a grounding, an image of grounding oneself, of literally putting stones underneath your head, perhaps around your body, as Rashi imagined, and feeling safer and grounded. So that's kind of step one. And then from that place, there's this ladder, the sulam. And it says the ladder itself is mutzav arza. It's rooted on the earth, into the earth. Virosho magia hashamayma, and its head was stretching heavenward. I learned this from Rabbi Alan Liu, Zichrono Livracha, that right, this is a kind of a model of our bodies in our meditation practice. We're grounded. So if our feet should be touching the ground or touching your chair, in our posture, our tush feeling like grounded. So feeling as grounded as we can, and that's the kind of the foundation of our physical posture, and it sets a tone for also what's happening spiritually, emotionally, mentally as well. So we're really grounding ourselves and kind of connecting to the stone and the earth of that place. When I do that, I can really feel it in my body. Like my muscles and my belly soften, my breath deepens a bit. I feel it softening in my shoulders, but especially in my belly. I can really feel a softening when I'm feeling grounded like that. Especially if I'm in a moment of like a lot of movement, a lot of transition, anxiety, all of a sudden, if I ground myself and stop, there's a softening and an opening in the physical body. And then from that place, I'm allowing for a kind of a natural flow of breath and really chayut, like life energy that's flowing up and down like those angels going up and down in that ladder, up the spine, and with the head kind of stretching heavenward, extended up. And so there's a combination of being grounded, but also allowing for fluidity and for movement. And that is really how we're holding our bodies and orienting ourselves uh, during our mindfulness practice. So as we sit, we're cultivating our capacity for feeling that, which is then going to come back when we need it. We're training and developing that capacity. And then, then when we're almost in the car accident, we are able to return back to that felt experience, even a little bit of feeling grounded. And then we're allowing for the movement, which has a kind of a flexibility and a responsiveness. So in our practice, we're there, we've arrived in this moment. Even though you knew you were coming to this mindfulness practice session, I assume, this moment is unexpected. You've arrived at this place. So now, how do you hold it? We're grounded, we feel safe, and then we're also allowing that natural breath and movement to occur. As thoughts arise, whatever arises, no problem. We just see it and return back. And for this short period of practice, if we can really, focus in and be with the physical body, I think we're doing ourselves a great favor in training and developing that capacity that we can then bring throughout our lives. So I'm going to ring a bell now, and then I'll ring a bell to end our period before Mourner's Kaddish. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. So we invite you to stay around for sharing some reflections and asking questions with Jordan after at the top of the hour. Before then, we have an opportunity for those who are saying Kaddish, remembering loved ones, to do so. So you can do that. We'll put the text of Kaddish up on the screen. Jet will do that. And if you'd like to put the name of someone that you are remembering today or people you're remembering today in the chat, please feel welcome to do that. And then we will have an opportunity to unmute if you want to join us in reciting Kaddish. Yitkadal, v'yitkadosh,
Shemei
v'alma, Barach v'yishtabach Dar v'yitkaveh v'yitzlal Shmei Yisrael Ila min kol birchata v'shirata v'ushbachata ta'amiran ba'alma
Amen.
Yehei Shlama Shmaya
Amen.
Say Shalom Yaseh Shalom
Shalom.
Amen. Amen.
Okay. All right. So thank you, everybody. If you need to leave us now, it's Eitchem L'Shalom, wish you farewell. And those who are sticking around, we'll bring Jordan back up to the stage here. There we go. Wonderful. So, and if you want to share any questions in the chat, or any comments in the chat, please feel welcome to do so. Jordan, so much chock full in this Torah portion, and the lesson about Jacob's ladder that you learned from Alan Liu, and I think I learned from you, and I teach a lot, certainly, as like this wonderful lesson about meditation posture, and the teaching also about Vayifgaba Makom, a sort of stumbling into something or alighting upon something. And I also have a spot in my house that once a year I hit my head on. It's that was a very evocative example. And I guess I wonder, if I'd invite you, I mean, since it happened yesterday, I'm glad that you're okay, obviously, but just how you find your practice helping. I think all of us probably have those moments when we get rattled by something that can be really intense, and it stays in our bodies and it stays in our consciousness for a while. It can throw off our focus, and there's layers of things to unpack. And I'm just wondering for you, if you want to reflect a little more about how your own practice is helping you, 24 hours or whatever later. You're kind of leaning on that. You spoke to it a bit, but I want to just, offer you, if you want to say a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you. So for me, and this was such a, this experience with almost getting in this little car accident, and it wouldn't have been a huge car accident, to be clear, but definitely unpleasant. And it shook me up, and almost, it's a really great example as to how I work with these, because as I continue driving home and then start to tell Yael, my wife, about it, I noticed how I immediately was in the story of it. Well, I turned and this is where the car was and this is where this was, and there's a story there. And and then I'm starting to think like, oh, who is this horrible person who was so angry at me, and who made this mistake driving, and then clearly was so angry at me. There's all this like a proliferation of thinking and stories and so much emotion connected to that. Very hard to like think one's way through that. Like, it's hard to think like, oh, probably she was, on her way, hurrying somewhere. And, like sometimes I can get there on that level of just the thinking about the scenario, but much more effective. And this is what I did yesterday. And, and I feel grateful that I developed this muscle in my practice, which was that I went into the body and I felt, how does this feel in my body? I'm thinking about it, telling myself all these stories, have all these thoughts about it, anger, etc. But in my physical body, there was also like so much, there was so much there. I could feel it, a tightness, my back. I notice like when I get upset, nervous, anxious, I feel it in my back more. It's so interesting, right? Each of us has these bodies that holds our lives in different ways. And so once I could notice what I was feeling in my body, I was then able to soften in the tissues, releasing the muscles in my belly, sitting down for a minute and just feeling grounded. And there's no story there. So to me, like, that's the place I go. That's very effective. And I train in that capacity every time I'm practicing in mindfulness.
Beautiful. Thank you. There's a number of comments here and questions. Noah asked a question. I was curious about working with the stone. I tried placing it as in imagery behind my head and in my lap, under the butt. I think I liked it in my lap. How would you suggest work with the stone, right, from the story of Jacob sleeping on the stone? Yeah. Jacob's
yeah.
Right?
I love that. I love that question, and that you were experimenting with the imagery. I think that's just right on. Each of there, like when I think about the rock under my head, as somebody, I love camping, and I was in the desert a month or so ago, and the rock is hard. And when I think about sleeping with a rock under my head, it feels so uncomfortable. But if I think about sitting on it, or I hadn't thought about that. Imagine like holding a stone in my hands. Oh, beautiful. Most importantly, I think, is that the entering into that as a felt sensation, not just as an idea, but how does it feel when I can really feel grounded in my body, steady, balance, and to explore what is that, how does that feel, and then to really lean into that in our experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as an anchor, yeah. And it's interesting that we talk about anchors, right, a lot in meditation practice. And anchor is actually not I come to think of it, it's not a word in Hebrew that I'm actually trying to pull up. What is the word for anchor in Hebrew? I'm sure someone here knows what it is.
We weren't seafaring folk.
No, you're right. I mean, not so much. But the same image is sort of conveyed in the notion of like Tzur Tamim, right? A rock, that's sort of everlasting and solid, and Tzur Yisrael, right? That notion. And so there's a firmness to that, and a sense of support. And it is kind of striking that like it's the last place I would generally want to sleep on, like to put my head. That's not very comfortable. But for your tush, for supporting, the rest of our body, it's really kind of fascinating.
And I also resonate with Rashi's read on it based on Midrashim, which is that Yaakov was like building a little like tunnel rock, like little protection or something like that around him. And that's another side to this of feeling grounded, is a sense of security. And it's all relative, right? Like the person who's feels so unsafe that they're safer to build a little rock cave around themselves. It's all relative. So we're not saying in our lives we could ever get to a place of total guaranteed safety. However, to cultivate a feeling more safe, like, okay, in this moment, given what it is, can I feel more safe? Can I feel more secure? And that sense of feeling safe is connected with feeling grounded. It's hard to feel grounded if you feel unsafe.
Yep.
And another just important piece I want to add, I think about this a lot with Noah's Ark, that one of the main takeaways for me from that story is the best time to build your ark is before the flood, if at all possible, right? You can't always do that, but sitting here today, and I saw, one person messaged me, I had shocking news yesterday, that's horrible. These things happen, but can we be training in an ongoing way in sort of building our ark? Like sitting here on a Tuesday, hopefully you're feeling relatively safe, and we can just cultivate these qualities now, because when the flood is here, we want to be able to rely on the ark that we've built. And sometimes we don't have that luxury, and we just grab whatever we can grab and build what we can in the moment. Whatever the case, we're strengthening our capacity to do that by engaging in this practice in an ongoing way. That's very much my experience, and I rely on it.
Yeah. A lot of lot of stuff coming up here about rocks. Andrew mentioning Moshe also placed in the rock, or the cleft of the rock, before being shown the divine tuchus. Very nice. I love that. I have to say, I love that spelling, tuchos. Anyway, so there was also a question here about listing the steps of the meditation practice. I'm not sure exactly what that was. Jordan, you know exactly what that was referring to?
I think so. And just to, I think very simply, to me, this is like, it's sort of two steps. First step is feeling grounded, and not to just think about feeling grounded, but to really try to feel that in our bodies, whether we're sitting, standing. One could also feel this way walking or moving in another way. But I think it's easiest in a stationary or relatively stationary posture to cultivate this quality of feeling grounded. Step one. Then step two is allowing, going on the imagery of the sulam, the ladder, allowing our this kind of extension in the spine. And I imagine it like there's a hook on the top of my head being kind of gently pulled up heavenward, as it describes the Rosho Magia Shemaima, the head at the top of the ladder is reaching heavenward, stretching heavenward. So we kind of imitate that in our bodies. And then it says, really, those are the two steps. And then what happens next is there's the movement, there's breath, there's the movement of mind. It can happen. But at the foundation is a kind of a rootedness, a groundedness that we anchor in.
Beautiful. Harris says, perhaps simple-minded comment, we can be mindful, have that movement until we are physically grounded in whatever way we can be. Yeah, it reminds me of the teaching in the Mishnah. I think I've mentioned it here before. One of my favorites, about that if you're riding on an animal and the time is, it's time to say the prayer, you say tefillah, that if you can dismount from the camel or whatever animal you're riding on, you should get off. You should turn yourself physically towards Jerusalem and you should pray. If you can't get off the animal, you should try to physically turn yourself towards Jerusalem. And if you can't do that, you should just direct your heart right towards, as though you're standing in front of the Holy of Holies. And so, right, there's almost here, it's a similar teaching, I think, of like, ideally, we can do this as a whole-bodied experience. The essence, however, right, is something we might be able to do even without being able to use the entire body. There are other pieces and the most essential parts of it we may be able to do. So,
yeah, that's great.
Beautiful. A lot of wonderful comments here. I'll close by just mentioning a few people have responded about the email I sent out yesterday about the incident that happened in our office building, just to reaffirm for everybody, nobody at IJS was hurt, and very far from it. Nobody was even there at the time, and our office was not targeted in any way. It's really just this brush with something that obviously is part of a much larger world. But certainly, is if Mark were here, he would say, what an opportunity for practice. Everything is an opportunity for practice, and as you said, Jordan, like, thank goodness, if we practice, we have this available to us when the going gets particularly tough. And so by having that muscle, it's like exercise. By having that muscle available to you, you're able to flex it, in moments when we really need it. So thank you. And thank you everybody for your good wishes about that. Really, really appreciate it. And we feel that love. So, okay. A lot more conversation about the tuchus. All right. We'll save that for another day. Andrew, we'll have to have a whole longer conversation about God's tuchus. Good title for a book. Thanks so much, everybody. Jordan, thank you as always for being with us today. Thank you everybody for being here. We'll be back tomorrow, and assuming I don't see you before then, I'll wish you, those who are celebrating, a happy Thanksgiving. So hope it is a happy and joyous and gratitude-filled holiday. So thanks everybody.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Happy Thanksgiving.